enter Don Bradman, who got a great ovation. Then a special cheer on the field.
So Don Bradman is definitely the greatest player of all time. Statistically, there's no one even close.
You look at his average, 99.94 I think it was, and you compare it to the guys of today who are absolute superstars of the game, and he's averaging double what they are. Even guys like Ponting, Steve Smith, they've got extreme averages because they're amazing players, but they're still nowhere near Don Bradman.
So Donald Bradman's average of 99.94 means every time he stepped out to play, he'd usually score about 100 runs. He was just 12 years old when he scored his first 100. As a kid, he'd spend hours practicing his skills, hitting a golf ball with a cricket stump in his backyard.
It's sort of almost a legend about how he used to train, and I suppose it's his hand-eye coordination that would have benefited so much from that. I think every kid tried that once or twice in the backyard, when they were younger. I certainly did.
We got Steve Smith and Glenn Maxwell to do it, and I don't think the two guys, Steve being one of the best batters in the world and Maxie's been one of the most talented batsmen in the world, I don't think they've hit two back-to-back, so it shows that the skill that he must have had.
That would have been so frustrating. It's not even like flat.
Bradman was such a champion, a museum was created, as well as stamps, books, a TV series, coins, even songs were written about him. A lot has changed since Bradman played more than 70 years ago, especially the bats.
Jeez, it's light.
Glenn Maxwell and myself actually got the bat out and had a look at it. It was a lot shorter and a lot thinner and much lighter than what all the big boys use in our team.
Can't imagine making too many runs with it though. It feels short.
They've probably doubled in edge size, and in total mass they're 3 times the size in some scenarios. They're substantially bigger, so weight really helps in getting the velocity of the ball and getting distance on your shot.
Bats used to be straight and simple, but today bat makers source only the finest wood, and then it's cut with curves and bows specifically to suit each player.
We'll come up with the shape and a weight and all the specifics, handle thickness, the shape of the handle, oval or round, and we'll come up with something that suits their game. Glenn Maxwell, for example, likes quite a heavy bat, whereas players like Mike Hussey are quite a bit lighter.
These bats allow cricketers to hit way over the fielders' heads, whereas Bradman had to hit along the ground.
Probably a more skillful game back then, trying to simply evade the fielders along the ground, whereas today you can often go over the top of the fielders.
Who knows what Bradman would have been capable of if he'd had one of today's bats. Batters today also have a lot more safety equipment. There's chest, thigh and leg pads, arm guards, neck guards, thick gloves and a helmet.
Back then I think they only had pads and gloves, and there's one thing for sure, I wouldn't put it on and go out and bat against the guys these days.
So it was more difficult to score runs because sometimes they just had to get out of the way to protect themselves. The pitches today are also different. Teams of people with special equipment, soil and products spend hours working on them. In Bradman's day, they didn't even cover them.
He used to play on uncovered wickets, where today we have full-time greenkeepers and curators looking after the wicket. They also put down the hessian down on the wicket, so then they put the cover down on top just to keep so the moisture doesn't get onto the pitch. The wickets usually dry fast and bouncy around Australia, where a lot of his wickets may have been wet and damp.
Imagine it as a batter, if you go off for 2 hours of rain when the wicket's uncovered, you come back and it's a totally different kind of prospect trying to make runs in those new conditions.
So Bradman may have scored even more runs if he'd batted on the manicured pitches we have today. But how would he have gone against our superstar bowlers? Technology is so advanced, bowling plans are created to get each batter out.
We've got a program that we can log into and look up any batter in the world and look at every innings that they've played, and it shows you where they score the runs, where they hit the boundaries, where the strong areas, where the weak areas, how they've been getting out.
We'll always have team meetings and talk together and come up with a plan that best suits that batter and how to get him out.
Back in Bradman's day, they didn't even have television.
was sort of coming in blind, I guess, and you could take a couple of overs to work the batsman out. Now you're sort of coming straight into a game and you know his weaknesses, know his strengths, and if you bowl well to the plan, it often works in your favour.
So would a bowler today have stopped Bradman from getting so many runs?
A player of his skill and the experience that he had, he would have found a way to still have success and probably come up with plans to counteract anything that they threw at him.
Fielding today is also a lot stronger. Players dive and leap all over the place, getting batters out.
There's been a real shift in the strength and the fitness of players and the movement of players.
I think you've got a lot more resources in terms of coaching and also equipment that you can use, to run fielding drills with.
I think it just comes from so much training and having that opportunity to train day in, day out.
Bradman couldn't train day in, day out because back then they also had full-time jobs. If he had trained as much as the players today, is it possible he could have been even greater? And is he really the greatest player of all time?
It's always hard to compare eras, but when someone dominates a sport like he did for a period of 20 years and averaged 40 more than the next best player, he would have played well in any era.
No one ever came close, and hopefully someone does it one day. But it's obviously hard to see that happening. You're playing 50 odd test matches and being able to maintain that kind of form.
It's an Australian sporting icon, and he will be forever.